Morning. How are you today?
Well,
Did you get one of these yet?
oh, thanks.
You have a good day? Did you get one yet?
What is
It's a DVD to ask kind of some worldview questions, kind of what you believe about God, and
it? Thank you.
have a good day, lady.
What are we peddling today?
I'm not peddling anything. I don't peddle in a lot of different ways. I'm Todd,
Hi,
and you are
Tiffany.
Tiffany. This is a DVD called The Biggest Question. It asks some worldview questions. It asks, what your beliefs are about God and why you believe those things, one way or another, whether you believe in Him or don't. And it kind of challenges people to think. So, Tiffany, right?
Yep.
So, how old are you, young lady?
18.
18. Are you here as a college student or as a high school student doing post-secondary?
Student.
As a college student?
Yep.
So, what are Tiffany's beliefs about God, if I can ask a few?
I kind of
And you can tell me whatever you want. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I promise I won't scream at you. I'll even take a breath mint to make sure I don't offend you.
Oh no, that's fine. I just think, there's infinite possibilities that there is one, and only one saying that there isn't. So, just
very
at
philosophical.
a gambling level, even, it's more likely that one does exist at some level than none at all.
So would you? So you would? And I don't want to.
Oh,
I don't want to put
don't
words.
worry.
I don't want to put
I'm
words
not,
in your mouth.
transgressible.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but see if I can sum it up in kind of a briefer statement. You'd be more agnostic, in other words. You wouldn't say that you definitively know there's a God, but that you would definitively say that there very well could be, or maybe has to be to some degree, some sort of higher power.
Yes.
So, what would cause you, Tiffany, as an individual to lean that direction? What makes you just what is it that you see in society or in the world or in the universe that makes you lean that direction?
It's just so many people, it had to come from somewhere, the concept of God.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be something behind it.
Okay. So, for the interest of full disclosure, I am a Christian. So, and I obviously as a Christian, I believe in the Christian God, as the Christian scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think you're lacking as an individual? And hear how I'm asking this. As an individual, what do you think is lacking to bring you into a full conviction of the existence for sure?
I just need to see a full-on sign. Like, there's no possibility that it couldn't be. It's not me making it up.
Okay. So, how much time do you have? I don't want to keep.
I got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. I'm glad that you put a timer on that. No pressure. Here's what I'll leave you with, since you have just a little bit of time. As you look around the world around you, you see things like bicycles, right? You see things like cars. You see things like buildings, or even this flagpole, and you would know that something had to have designed those things, correct?
Yeah.
So especially in the case of a building, there's an architect.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is there an architect, somebody had to design it, somebody had to literally come in and build it. We know that this did not, as strange of a shape as this building is, actually even more so, as strange as it is, there had to have been somebody that was actively behind that design and actively behind putting it together. And so my challenge is, don't just rest in this. Well, there has to be kind of sort of somebody has to be out there involved, but everything about nature is pointing towards a grand designer. And the idea of kind of this amorphous, you strike me as a rather intellectual young lady, the idea of this amorphous, otherly supernatural power that's kind of exists outside of space and time is a great starting point. But it also takes more than just the watchmaker mentality of God that Thomas Jefferson somewhat talked about, the watchmaker mentality of here's this God who kind of set things in motion, then just step back to watch to see how things happen. Because if you look, the human being is intricately designed. Even the human eye is more, even when it, obviously we have people, you and I, our eyes aren't perfect, right? But there's still something there that points to a very intricate design, because the human eye is the most complicated lens that man has ever discovered and cannot repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
So even the best man-made camera lens or camera eye can't do what the human eye does when it's working.
Yeah.
When it's working properly, and that has to be intimately and intricately designed, and that kind of declares the God of Christianity. And it says that in the scriptures in Romans chapter 1, that all of creation declares that God is real and that He's there and that He exists. And so I would challenge you, because, like I said, you strike me as a rather intellectual young lady. I would challenge you to watch that DVD and a couple of times if you have time. It's only a half an hour long, roughly.
Right.
Not even that. Maybe watch it a couple of times. But I would love to hear back from you and hear what your thoughts are.
Right.
And my contact information is on there. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yep, you too.
I don't know how you're wearing that sweatshirt right now. Whew.
It's a little hot, but
Yeah.
it's freezing in there.
Is it really cold inside?
Yeah.
That explains it. You have a good day.
Yep, you too.
Morning. How are you?
Fine.
Hey, how are you?
Good, are you?
Can I get you one of these?
What are they?
It is a worldview DVD, and judging by the paraphernalia that you're wearing, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, you look like you are a person that thinks about worldviews.
You're not wrong.
I'm Todd. I'm sorry, you're trying to take a drink. Is that
No,
water or
that's-
tea?
No, it's tea.
Tea? What kind of tea are you
Andrew.
drinking?
Peppermint.
Peppermint?
Yes.
So what is your perspective? I see this looks a little Eastern.
Yes,
Is
you are
it
correct.
transcendentalism or?
I try not to. Really, it's putting a definition on the divine is quite a challenge as far as the human mind and comprehending that which is beyond ourselves. But just transcendental. I guess Dharmic, you could say,
Dharmic.
would be the philosophies that
So
resonate most
you're
with
taking with the Dharmic side, you're taking a little bit out of kind of a Buddhist,
Hinduism,
Hindu.
Buddhism, yeah, Taoist. You know, I
Taoist,
don't
yeah.
really adhere to one. I think there's something of substance in all of them, and it's all just kind of listening to what feels right within. Honestly.
What was your name again?
Andrew.
Andrew. I'm sorry. I meet literally in the course of my actual work and the course of what I do here. I meet a ton of people. So I'm a Christian missionary.
Okay.
And like I said, I have a full-time career, but I do this as my passion,
Mhm.
and I like to go out and I love to engage people who have settled worldview convictions.
Mhm.
Even if they don't.
Well, I don't even consider myself really convicted. It's always subject to change. I'm in tune with, I guess, higher.
So you're
truth.
convicted that it's subject to change.
Yes, exactly. You're not wrong with that either. I think, for one man to claim that he is in tune with what God is in tune with at all time is, I think, misguided, because
I can appreciate that.
every person has their different relative truth as far as what God has in store for them. It's not. I don't think it's absolute for every single person. I think each person has a different expression of the divine to offer this world.
So you would also probably then be a little bit more. And let me know when you got to go. I don't mean.
My class is canceled, so.
That stinks when you
Not
pay for
really.
something.
I-
No.
Well, yeah, I like the teacher, so.
What class was that?
You had composition.
English comp?
No, just writing.
Just writing.
Well, yeah, not is John Burke. He's the teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Andrew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I hear also a little bit of postmodern philosophy in your worldview when you say
You could
everybody
really,
has their own truth.
Yeah, and you could really say I'm more on the. You want to put a definition on it? Eclectic, because I do really appreciate what each one has to offer, but I don't really care for the dogmatic delivery of it, to where this is it, and if you don't adhere to this, you're going to hell.
So you wouldn't quite be as strict in your postmodern philosophy and combining that with the Dharmic practices as, say, somebody who is a firm adherent to secular humanism.
I can find a balance between the two. I think when you get started, kind of what I would say, shifting your perspective beyond the human perspective, or behind that.
No, you're fine.
Beyond the human experience, it could start to be secularized, but if you have the willingness and openness to continue to go deeper, then it does get to be more spiritual and more in tune with some lineage, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism, Taoism, whatever I guess has been passed down through the ages. I think at some point, if you keep going, something is going to start to makes sense to you. The language, the delivery, just the philosophy. But to me, the message is very widespread across every religion. It's just a messenger that's different.
Yeah, and culture plays a big part.
We all have a very different way of looking at it, depending on which way of the world. But love, peace, joy, harmony among men and women. That's pretty much the core of a lot of teachings in my perspective.
I like that you bring that up, because contrary to what a lot of people would believe, and I think there's a lot of misrepresentation out there, and
absolutely
I'll speak from, obviously I can't speak from everybody else's perspective, just like nobody else can speak from my perspective as well. But I would say from the tradition of Christianity
Excuse me. Hey, you're in John Berkey's class, right? I guess it's canceled. He sent out an email. So.
Oh, well then. Thank you for the heads up,
absolutely. So.
Too bad you didn't check the email sooner.
Well, I was just in my other class.
So
I checked it when I walked up.
that's how things happen. That's how things happen for me.
Yeah.
As I.
Hey, you do the same.
Where was I? Oh, so yeah.
Christianity.
Speaking from a. When I use the term Orthodox, I'm not talking about Greek Orthodoxism or Eastern Orthodoxism, but speaking from a more Orthodox Christian perspective. I think there's a lot of misrepresentation on the part of people who claim to be Christian. Even,
yes, 100%.
Of what Christianity teaches. In fact, I just had a conversation with a gentleman whose wife is an instructor here, a teacher, professor, I don't know what they call him. And I said, one of the things that really bothers me about Christianity in the United States is we've made it almost exclusively an American religion.
I can definitely see a lot of where that's coming from,
I don't know if I could put too strong of a word on it, but I actually despise that, because
no, I'm right there with you. It's so exploited and abused for what I believe is power and money, and I think that is what is. And a podcast I've listened to, the phrase the guy used was allergic to God, to where you just say God and people are like, ugh, get away. They don't even, just with how, the whole...
Which podcast is that?
I think the guy's name is Matt Belair. So I listened to a few different ones. The main one I've listened to is on the Be Here Now network with Ram Dass and a lot of other guys.
Ram Dass sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he's a pioneer as far as bringing Eastern spirituality into the West and then blending it. And you heard of Thich Nhat Hanh?
That I know.
So he's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, and
with a podcast.
Well, no, not with a podcast, but he writes a lot of books, and a very what I think powerful an eloquent way of saying it is that, regarding Buddhism or something like that, it's not necessarily. I would identify Hinduism as more of a religion, because there's a lot more deities and just different lore and mythology there. But Buddhism is not a religion. He said it's a practice. He says he knows a Christian priest that practices Buddhism, and he says that Buddhism makes him a better Christian. And so just that blend, I think
syncretism is what Christianity often would refer to that as, is a syncretizing, which there again, you could discuss differences on that, but what I was saying was I'm troubled by, or hopefully righteously indignant about the way American culture has actually more influenced American Christianity than true Christianity has influenced.
I just see that
and that's one of the reasons why I go out and do what I do, now, and this is what I mean. So especially in the United States today, postmodernism has really kind of gained a bigger foothold than anybody would have ever suspected.
What is your definition of postmodernism?
Postmodernism, with a really loose definition, would just be the philosophical belief that there's no substantive truth. Everything is subjective. There can be no true moral absolutes, because absolutes pin too many people down or force people into
too black and white.
Make things into too black and white. And that's a very simplified definition. But I think it's a good enough definition of.
It lays enough things out.
Exactly. It allows. So what it has done is postmodernism actually has inculcated a lot of the thought, and that doesn't mean that everything that's modern or pre-modern is therefore right. But postmodernism, having risen up out of the last, risen up in the last, 30 to 40 years,
Yeah,
and even a
it's
little bit
pretty
before,
young.
has still gained a strong foothold, and it's actually permeating the Christianity to the point where now you'll find Christians who will say things like, well, subjectively speaking, I can't know for a fact that what I believe is true. Now, some people would
I'd
call
appreciate
that,
something like that,
and some people
because-
would call that admirable, and I can appreciate that you would say that, Andrew. But at the
Because
same
how
time,
can we know, honestly? I mean, with as vast, I just don't adhere to the fact that as vast and all powerful as, and I'll use God, but I interchange many different divine names for it, spirit, I mean, consciousness, it's, to me, it's all many names for the same thing, but I just don't believe that we as humans in our limited,
finite.
our finite and limited comprehension of the world can claim to know this vast and all-powerful energy at any given moment. There may be moments where it comes, like glimpses of the divine, where we have moments of realization and stark truth, but then to push your own, in what you're saying, subjective and relative truth onto another human being is misguided. I think the intentions are right, but the delivery of it is not.
Which I would
necessary.
actually agree with you on one aspect of what you just said, is that the pushing.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, I hope you don't feel this conversation is a push.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I actually I despise, or again, hopefully in a righteously indignant way, the idea of pushing somebody that you have to do this. Now,
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Penn Jillette? He's atheistic. He's Penn and Teller, the magicians who they went around and
That
did some
sounded
debunking
familiar.
videos.
Okay.
They had a show, I think it was on HBO for a while, that uses a word I won't, feces. And they went through and they kind of debunked a lot of stuff, even other magicians and stuff, and they showed how this is all just sleight of hand and there's no real magic and all that. But Penn Jillette actually did a video a while ago, several years ago, and I don't remember exactly how long ago, but he was talking about, in that video, he was talking about how he met a Christian man who had actually come to his show. And in the course of, at the end of the show, in the course of leaving, he actually met this man. And this man handed him a Bible and just said, I would love for you to read this. And what Jillette said was, while I disagree with him completely as an atheist, I want to commend him for having the courage of his convictions. Because if you really believe that you have the truth and you're not telling people that truth, and you know that if they don't believe what you believe, there's a very high likelihood that they're going to enter into eternal damnation, you must really hate a person to not tell them that. And that's the difference between someone, there have been denominations, and I could point at several throughout the history of Christianity who have gone into an area and said, you're going to worship the way we worship, and if you don't, you're going to be persecuted and maybe even put to death.
Well,
and
that's where you
that
get the
is
Spanish Inquisition and stuff like that.
and even the people who come from my traditional background, Christian tradition, were actually lost their lives in a lot of the inquisitions and the persecution, because they didn't adhere to a very particular brand of Christianity. And so that might be why, as I have studied the history of my faith, that might be why I take such a dim view on this idea of people who force it on you. Now,
So what church do you go to?
I happen to be in a Reformed Baptist church in Stewartville,
Okay.
and so that is my, I wouldn't say denomination, but that is my, we'd call it soteriological leaning. Soteriology being the study of salvation. That's my soteriological leaning as I have studied Scripture. And the wonderful thing about where I've arrived at in my studies of Scripture is that I can't force you to become a Christian. And there would be some people who would say, you can really, you use manipulative tactics, you really appeal to emotion.
See, and that to me, that's not even from the divine. Then that's for your own ego-based purposes.
And I actually agree with that. And so, because and here again, this is where American influence and even some of the influence pre-Enlightenment and even some Enlightenment influence on the church has been, Christianity cannot be an intellectual pursuit. Yet some of the greatest thinkers that I read, and I don't read strictly Christians, I read some atheist philosophers and others, and sometimes
it's good to look